Life.
Very good evening, friends. A very, very warm welcome to another engaging session between eminent author Shibu Kochiri and a very, very, very well known and um, uh, advertising veteran, Ruma Dasgupta, who will be in conversation with the author on his book Faith and the Beloved. I won't take much time. I will quickly introduce the two of them and then I will hand it over to Rumadi, who will take the session forward. Ruma Dasgupta worked as creative director in multinational advertising agencies. She has experience in freelance journalism with published articles in leading dailies as The Statesman, The Telegraph, Span magazines, etc. She taught in management institutes like the IIHM. She also taught advertising in St. Xavier's College, as well as script writing in SRFTI. She's presently engaged in writing and branding assignments. Thank you, Rumadi, for being with us today. And we do look forward to you moderating this very, very exciting session that will follow soon. Okay, the author, Kochiri C. Shibu, the best-selling and award-winning author of Men and Dreams in the Dhauladhar, graduated from the prestigious National Defense Academy, Khadak Wasla, in 1981. He has served in the Indian Navy and commanded 2 warships. Post his retirement, he has executed hydroelectric projects in the Kaveri River Basin in Karnataka, Beas River Basin in Himachal, and Teesta River Basin in Sikkim. He holds a postgraduate degree in Defense Studies from Chennai University and an MA in English Literature from Pune University. Shibu has changed tack from the snow-clad mountains to the blue oceans and has been associated with the setting up of a shipping company in India. Faith and the Beloved is his second book. Many of the characters in the novel are inspired from those whom he has encountered during his extensive travel. Kochiri C. Shibu was born in Kochi, Kangarapadi, and now lives in Bangalore with his wife and daughter. Thank you, Shibu. Thank you so much for being with us today. And we look forward to you being in conversation with Rumadi for the next hour. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you so much.
Hello, Shibu.
Hi.
I've
Good
been
evening,
looking
Ruma.
forward to meeting you since I read your book. I
Oh, okay.
really
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it. Okay. And since the time I laid my eyes on this book and Faith and the Beloved, I read, I thought it must be something very spiritual, something very, very otherworldly and elevated and all that. But then when I got into the book, it was different, excitingly different, I would say. It had to do with these criminals and, terrorists and dirty politicians and the real world. Tell me, Shibu, why did you call it Faith in the Beloved?
Why did I fall?
Why did you call the book, why did you name the book, the title, Faith and the Beloved?
Uh, okay. Now, the if you see, the whole book is about the faith, as I've described in the book, is not really, the faith in relation to religion. It's more about value systems. It's about the value systems of individuals and what they believe in, and how much you are willing to stand for what you believe, and what is your value system that you follow. So there are, various characters, and their actions are shaped by whatever value system they're following. Some of them right, some of them not so right as per what we call our moral norms of our, the society at large. So the whole question is that
That's not his problem, not mine.
Hello, Shabu, are you there? I think there is a technical glitch. That's unfortunate.
We wait for.
Readers, please wait. In the meantime, let me tell you a little about this book. Uh, okay, you're back, Shibu. There was a technical glitch. Can you,
yeah.
okay?
Yeah. So what?
We
So what
lost
I
you
was
for
saying
a
is
while.
that faith and the beloveds. Yeah. So what I was saying is, faith and the beloved in the faith stands for the value system of individuals and what they believe in. And beloved, of course, is your beloved ones. And there comes a stage in life when you may have to cross the line to stand for your beloved ones. And that's a challenge which is thrown open to the characters in the book. And therefore, the whole question is, how much do you believe in yourself? How much do you believe in what you stand for? And how much are you willing to stretch yourself for your beloved ones? And that's the gist of the book. Not in the traditional, what do you call the classical sense of faith as talked about by the religious faith. No, it's faith as individuals believe in as their value system.
Okay. Uh, See, for most things that we do in life, there is a purpose or a compelling reason. It can be emotional, it can be rational. What is your reason for writing this book?
So I'll go one step further and say, what is my reason for writing? So let's put it like that. So writing has been a passion with me. I suppose storytelling is an art, and some are, it has been with me since my school days. The challenge, of course, was that I joined the National Defense Academy, and after that, the writing took what I will call a military turn. So you're writing about strategy, warfare, arms, tactics, the kind of stuff. Most of it must be gathering dust in the classified cupboard somewhere in the naval headquarters in Delhi. But I did a lot of writing then. So I could not take time out as the career soldier to do fiction writing. So it's only after I left and, take, enough time. So the first book that I wrote was a literary fiction. That was the first book called Men and Dreams in the Dhauladar, kind of formatted after the, let's say the Booker Prize kind of style of writing. So that took me 4 years to write, and it takes a lot of effort to write literary fiction, a phenomenal amount of effort. And I decided that I'll do a second book will be a crime thriller. That's something which I used to be fond of once upon a time. So I decided to write a crime thriller, and I worked on it for 2 years. And of course, I love storytelling, and I believe that the storytelling is one of the ways to communicate many things. Sometimes a point of view, sometimes a value system, sometimes situations that people are not aware of. So, and in Indian English writing, when it comes to that, one of the things I felt is that one never gets to read about the professional background or the life of people in their professional circles. Very very few authors get into details of that, which is something which I believe we need to introduce. And it has been my effort in the first book, which was about the life of the well, let's say the workers in a hydroelectric project site. It's a kind of microcosm which is never written about, and unless you've been there, you'll never know. Similarly, in this case, I've talked about it's not just a fiction part. I have to give it a real reality touch with the background, which is some of it, even I'll say call it documentary writing or literary fiction writing, in many ways about background of people, events that take place, and then how it affects them.
It's gone again.
You just push it out.
I'm sorry. Again, there was some disruption with the net.
Connection problem.
Yeah. Okay. So in that sense, so it is. The writing is always. It's always a passion which I've had, and then I guess you would like to tell people about a story that you would like to tell, a point of view, a life that you think that should be known, seen from a different angle, and so many things.
Okay. I'm going to read out a little bit, a little portion from a book. After that, I have a question for you. Ramayana is all about living by the letter of the law. Mahabharata is about living by the spirit of the law. Arun said stoically and looked at Prem. Prem thought for a few seconds and knew it was too profound a statement even to contest. He was still churning it in his mind when the next question came. Do you know who the true hero in Mahabharata is? Arun was smiling as he looked at Prem. Arjun or Karna? I consider Ashutthama to be the true hero, Arun replied immediately with an air of finality. Every time anybody's asked me, which is your favorite book? I've always said it's the Mahabharata. So it seems you have an affinity for the great Indian epics. Now, how have you woven in, not just by quoting, but within the plot, all the learnings from Mahabharata and Ramayana, which I can say you've read very thoroughly?
Yes, I mean, I will say one thing. I'll tell you. So I also agree with you. I think the I would rate Mahabharata as the best book that I have also ever read. I mean, I would say that there is nothing beyond the Mahabharata. Consider if you include Gita as part of it, then it's the ultimate, and no book in any part of the world which I would consider better. I mean, that's I also consider that storytelling at its best, and there is not this almost any and every kind of situation that's covered in that. So what when I've said what I said is that is in the sense that if you look at Ramayana, it's about the Ram is a dutiful son and his father has given a word, so he should go 14 years. He doesn't ask a question, he just goes and takes his wife and his brother who is so committed, he leaves everything behind and goes accompanies him. And so it is not really that is not the spirit you're going by the letter of the law and the spirit of the law to some extent, but more by the letter of the law. And if you check out, whereas in Mahabharata, Duryodhan, if you see, he has lived by the letter of the law, but never by the spirit of the law. And whereas the Krishna has been telling the Pandavas to go by the spirit of the law, and not everything has been by the letter of the law, but yes, within the spirit of the law it works. So I guess it's both are to be seen in that spirit in which it was written, because here on one side you have a story of a hero who has gone to, like what do you call, he decided to go to the jungle because to keep the honor his father's word. Then his wife is kidnapped by somebody. Then he wages a war to get her back. Then he comes back to the country and puts his own wife to a fire test. And in the end, he almost ends up killing his own sons. It's a very difficult life. But you see the value system. It's all about commitment to your parents, your brother's commitment, your the commitment to your wife. So many things. It's about, let's say that the value system by the book, by the letter of the law. But Mahabharata, it's all about being say living in this real world where that where you have to deal with these the power games and how you play the game. So any and every aspect. I mean, whatever he talks about in that. So many things are talked about. One of the reasons they brought out is this since those students or the generation of us who do the education with English as a primary medium, so they have the limitation that the exposure to the Indian epics and the Indian let's say heritage is sometimes, depending on which school they go to and how they are brought up and how much they introduced, it's curtailed. So they may be, they may think that, that Spider-Man and, maybe that, any those kind of things are okay. But if they say Hanuman, they will laugh. Whereas they must understand that. So one of the ideas was to bring out these aspects also, the sublime wisdom and that, the deep, the what do you call that, deep philosophies that's involved in this book. Even when you're writing this book, people are reading. the new generation leaders from India, why not? They should also think. So that is,
Okay.
kind of by design. Yes, I am with you. I mean, I don't think there's a book better than Mahabharata. It's the ultimate book.
It's the ultimate book. I also think so. Okay, there's another part of the book which I enjoyed. I'd like to read that out to the reader so that when they pick up the book, they know why I'm recommending it. The report had focused on an Osmila. He was from the Olaf tribe. His father in law was a landed gentry from the east of Bamboo with a large tract of peanut farmers. There were a number of Jola tribesmen who were the elite guard of the president, answerable only to him. He had seen the winds of change and knew that could be in trouble once he was voted out of power. There was a deal struck by which Osmila could set up his own shipping logistics company. In return, he had to set up cement factory in Gambia through a shell company for the president. The cement factory from Nigeria would do the setting up of the cement factory, and the cement vessels would be handled by Osmila. Also, he had to network and transport the president's men to Senegal as and when required. You also have a very deep interest in geopolitics and huge knowledge of it. How did you gain that knowledge? How did you get into so much of nitty-gritties on geopolitics?
Yes,
Overconfident interest. Overconfident interest.
Can you hear me, Shibu? Something wrong with your net
can
connection,
you
I
hear me?
think.
I know my internet has been actually dropping on and off, so some issues this
Okay,
side.
okay. So we were
So,
talking of your
so,
interest in
so I,
geopolitics.
yeah. So I'll just continue from this. So any aspect of, let's say, our nation's history or in events taking place always have had geopolitical implications. So in this story, when you talk about the LTTE, so there was a time when the Zimbabwe as a nation was kind of blacklisted by the world community, and they could not sell their diamonds to the open world. So they were selling to anybody and everybody who will pay them a price. And that is the kind of practice which was used. And then Gambia was a small nation south of Senegal, and where they used to be a kind of conduit point. And it's and whatever I've written in that is kind of loosely based on historical events, loosely based. I'm not claim for 100% accuracy because it's fiction. But something similar has happened. So the LTT, which was well networked, they've used all kinds of means. So this is also one of the means, that diamonds is one of the means. And therefore, and they've used the, let's say, vulnerabilities of changing political states to know where it fits and where it falls into place. So that aspect has been brought in deliberately because Gambia was a place from where the slave trade started. The Britishers started the first slave trade from Africa to America from this place, where the whatever we talk about the slave trade and what they talk great now, but if you go and if you see the kind of stuff that they did, it's unbelievable. So the idea was to bring in, and second part is also that to the Indian readers to know how much even an Indian organization, when I say a subcontinental organization, LTT was not part of India. So even if it was Sri Lanka, but part of the subcontinent, they could reach out all over the world. And that is also a deliberate effort to bring it out.
Okay. And how much research has gone into this book?
Can you hear me
Not
now?
just in terms of geopolitics, but also, you have explored the underbelly of society.
Ruma, you hearing me?
Now I can hear you. Yes.
Hello?
Hello? Hello? I can hear you.
Can you hear me,
Hello,
Ruma?
Shibu? I can hear you. You can't hear me?
I will leave. I'm leaving and logging in again.
Okay.
Okay, okay, please do that.
তুমি লাইভে আছো তো, লাইভে আছো তো। দেখতে পাচ্ছ সবাই। সরে যাও, সব লাইভে আছে। তুমি খুব ভালো করছো।
There are so many interesting characters in this book. It is very, very. I felt that it is much more character led than plot led. It's not like not like a typical thriller. It's more an exploration of crime and criminals, and that is where I found this book very different from a typical crime thriller. We're waiting for Shibu to join us. There's a problem with his net.
Ruma, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
So did you miss the previous part, or I need to repeat?
Yeah, if you could, not maybe the last 2-3 lines.
Okay, so I was just saying that this was a deliberate effort to sensitize the readers to the spread of events that can take place geopolitically. That's part of any kind of crime thriller. That's part of the game. So it was by
Okay.
design.
Yes, I did hear you saying this. My question was that you have also done a lot of research on the underbelly of society. The criminal world and politicians and all of that. Now, how did you go about it? That's I think one of the most exciting part of the process, and the process interests me a lot more than often the final thing that comes out. The process is very, very meaningful, I think.
Sure, of course. I see one of the things I say is that anyone who wants to be a writer needs to be a good reader. So let's say I'll give you. So one of the things is that you have to read and keep track of events as they take place, and keep in the back of your mind or keep a note so that you can use it later. So to quote an example, there was an actual event when about 10 years back, there was an event when there was a terrorist who was killed in Dubai by Israeli commandos, an Israeli team. So one fine day, they said, one Palestinian, the terrorist was killed in Dubai, and for a couple of days there was total silence. Nobody knew how it had happened. Then the Dubai police took the help of ISI, and it was reported in the media, along with video footage. They put it together and showed who were the Israelis who had come, which hotel they stayed, where they met, and how they planned the whole operation, and it was completely deciphered, decoded, and put into the open media. Then, of course, they had used some British passports of Britain. UK had objected to Israel, and there was a little bit of a diplomatic row over that event. So now this is what is written in the book is, let's say, an event is based on something which has actually happened. So this does, that's why I said, no, that when you look at the event,
Okay.
you get enough information, and this is an event which took place, and you use your imagination to make it fiction. So that's
Right.
one part. And similarly, now let's say that what we talk about, let's say the ISI and their activities. Again, let's say whether it is the printing of the 500 rupee notes, which is something which had become a kind of
Yes.
bane for our currency, because these people are printing the same thing and people didn't know what to do with it. So there's a history about it, that it was known, and there's that how they gone about doing it. So I guess some of it is a lot of it is keeping an ear to the ground and research and developing it. Not easy. I agree with you. That's a challenge. If it was easy, then everybody could do. It takes both. You need to get some facts, then you need to do a fair amount of research, then use the imagination for where you're not able to connect them. That's how it works.
Okay. Are there, those characters like Arun and others, are they modeled on anybody you know? Or Naithi? Naithi, that's the pronunciation, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yes, right. No, it is no. It's not modeled on directly on somebody whom I know, but I have met IIT, IIM ladies who are talented, who have run businesses, and who are capable. So one challenge is always that of course they are not into any of this, and this may not relate to what has happened to what you're saying in the book. But it is just to highlight to the audience that that in India there's a traditionally, when it comes to money, family, or business, it is a kind of taken a patriarchal domain.
Okay.
The business passes over from father to son, even including the Ambanis. They're no different. It has moved on from the Dhirubhai to his sons, not his daughter. So whereas here we are just trying to bring out, that in this changing times, ever since they opened up the economy, and the opportunities opened up for talented women. About really, of course, there are one or two or three of them who are right on top of the table, which who are known to everybody. But there are so many of them who may not be known top of the table, but doing similar job. So many of these characters are inspired from people whom I have met, but there is no one character whom I can say for Nethi read X, for that Arun read Y. No.
Okay. There's one part which I really had fun reading. I'll just read that out. Mia had made changes to the underworld code of communication, and after he moved out of Mumbai, it was linked to Bollywood, and the gangs caught on fast. The codes were changed frequently. The code for cocaine was a leading actress's name, and that for the peddler was that of the leading actor. Code for 10 million rupees had been changed from Khoka to Khan. He preferred the new term he had coined, Tijori, for 500 million rupee. Then there was the dreaded code of Maharaj for the encounter specialist. Francis was the dangerous inspector from the encounter team. Sergi were those senior police officers who were friendly with the underworld. Then there were his favorite codes of Chappal and Fagi, which stood for revolver and pistol. He liked to avoid the usage of guitar, which stood for AK 47. Now, how did you get these?
So anybody
You
who
must
is,
be
if
having
you lived
some
in
kind of underworld connection, I'm sure.
if you lived in Bombay sometime, which I have,
Yeah.
when you speak to the localites, speak to the lingo, this is very common lingo with the Bombays. Whatever is the current underworld terminology is kind of common lingo with the Bombays. You speak to them, they'll say, "Apan se baat nahi karne ka kya," and then they'll take off on, what is the current trend, what are the words being used. So it keeps changing, and that's an actual practice. They do have terminology. They say, what, the code words, simple code words, which they use in their day-to-day dealings on their phones,
So, but how did
messages.
you extract those code words? Is what I want to know. These code words are code words, and therefore you and I are not supposed to know.
So what I have given is it will be the one, not the current ones. These are dated ones. Once it get outdated, it comes out open.
Okay.
That's how it works.
Or you talk to the
So
cops or
it's,
something.
yeah,
Okay.
because this is not be the these will not be the ones which are running now. This is maybe about
Okay.
this would have been abandoned by them maybe 6 7 years back. So otherwise they'll be getting upset about it. No, it would have been, and they keep changing, so that doesn't matter.
Okay. Uh, and in any of those people, the criminals that you've talked about, are they there around you? Have you met any of them, and who has kind of inspired you?
No, no, this is. I have met criminals. Not that I have not met.
Uh,
I have met, but this is not directly lift off of ex criminal or Y criminal, but for that, in the
you
sense
have a
that
lot of
see.
adult. Sorry. Please continue.
No, I'm just saying that so when you write a book with a vast spectrum like this, where your blend of characters is from all strata of society, from the top IIT, IIM to the bottom and to the spec. So the character sketching is a fair part of the job. I would say that I would spend 80% of my time in character sketching, which because for the same reasons that you questioned that you said, no, because your character should come live, and when you read it should as if like you'll ask the same question that okay, so who was this guy? So then I think okay, that means good enough. So which is it is not
So
modeled on any external.
you give more importance to character or to plot, which is in crafting characters. Do you give more of your energy, or to the delineation of the plot?
Of course, character sketching, because especially with it, see if you're restricting yourself to a love triangle and one kind of stereotype characters, then it is easy. But when you come up with when you various strata of society and various types of people, it takes a lot of time and effort to study people like that who have existed in some point in time. So you read about them, see some the television articles or the reported incident which have taken place, and then you have to look at an actual person whom you met in real life and then say this person must be like this, how he or she would be. So that's a fiction imagination part. So it takes it's, I would say, the most challenging part and the most enjoyable part. So the fact is that many people have asked me this, who is this guy? Whom have you met? Whom are you representing? I said no. So the fact is that if you have characters coming live, okay, I accept that as a compliment, but that's where it ends.
Okay. There's also a lot of adult content in your book. Is it because sex is as intriguing as crime?
Uh, there are two sides to this. Okay, so now that you asked me this question, very straightforward. One, see, from the reader's perspective, so crime and violence, whilst it happens in the society, for majority of the people, you do not come across it in your life. That means if you speak to people, you may read about crime every day in the newspaper and in the television and in your radios everywhere. But in your real life, you are not a victim or you are not a perpetrator of crime. For majority of the people, I would say around almost 99 plus percentage of the people, crime is what happens. Yes, but you are not involved directly or indirectly. So many of the people, so when you talk about violence or crime, they see it and read it and then leave it at that. So it's it's only they look at it, what is the thing behind, what is the plot, and who solved and how it was solved. Whereas when you talk about sex, it is different because it affects every one of us. Because everyone in the society has it is and he knows what sex is or will know in due course of time or would like to know, and it impacts your life in many ways. And to many of the readers, so that let's say the even problems related to that becomes a far more, let's say, serious issue for them than what is related to crime. So because of which many of the readers are more sensitive to the way you portray. So some of them do not like to read a toxic male in a novel, because they say I have seen enough of such, enough toxic men in real life, and they're troubling you enough with that, media and news every day. Why should I read about them in the novel? But then that's a reality. The toxic men do exist. So to that extent, and second is when you write a book like this about LTT and this, when you bring in ISI as an organization is second only to Mossad for using women in their, the game of spying and entrapment and the whole lot of things that they do.
Is that so?
I mean, as
Oh, I
yeah,
didn't
it's a
know.
trademark. I mean, ISI is used. They're very, very, very sophisticated when they come to using of women in their activities. As a matter of fact, you all will find that they're the agents of let's say the uh, crime or whatever they plan to do is most of the time it's women. It's
Okay.
Mossad is the best, then ISI and the second best. It used to be CIA once upon a time and KGB once upon a time.
Mm.
But you imagine they've been taught by the CIA, they reach that level. So because of the reason, when you write a book like this, it will come in. There is a certain amount of adult content by the nature of the book. Because if you're telling LTT and you're talking about making a pornography movie, then the subject will be pornography. So it's like that. So to that extent, some of it is as required by the book. And second part is, as an author, when you write, you do not think about sensitivity and sensibility and also the process of writing because you'll never be able to write. Because you get into the shoes of the character, you imagine yourself being, it's a challenging part because you get into what shoes of one character, do a research. Okay, you're Naithi today for maybe 1 week, you're writing about Naithi, then you stop, then you have to become Arun, then you have to get into his shoes and write about him. So you do not think about, the nuances of who's going to feel hurt or who's going to feel right or wrong. You feel and you write what you think is right for the character that you created. And on completion, it's with the editor who takes you to the task, who takes you to the cleaners and say, this is right, this is wrong, cut here, cut there. So in that one, otherwise, you have to be confident about what you're writing and what you believe is required for the story. And if
Okay.
you say that you've done the story and say, no, it is not good enough, I want to add some muscle, and you slap one, then of course, that takes a different turn. That is, this has not been done like that. It's been written the way it felt. And just to give an example, there is a perception, let's say, just taking maybe a digression, but even in our temples, if you see in India, the old ancient temples, many of the old temples, you have, let's say, the carvings on the outer periphery of the temple, which shows, the Kama Sutra postures sculpted out to educate the people
Yes.
on the process of sex. It is not considered
Also,
anything.
sex those days was taken as a way of life. It was not treated as prudishly as it's treated today. That's what I think.
True. And then one more thing is, let's say, there's a very famous story about Sri Shankaracharya, who revived Hinduism. And, otherwise we'd all been Buddhists, but for him. So there's a famous, there is a famous debate that he has got,
Tell me.
with one of those leading philosophers who was promoting ritual-based, let's say, practicing of religion. So he defeats him. And when he defeats him, his wife was a very learned lady. So she told Shankaracharya that you must debate with me also because if you say that my husband is active defeat, he's supposed to become a sannyasi. Then where do I go? So in which case you have to debate with me also because I am 50% partner in the game. So he debates with her, and at some point, so she asks him. This is I'm telling you, 9th century AD. She tells him that the act of procreation is the ultimate joy or the extreme expression of joy that exists, almost insinuating that it is almost like as good as being the creator yourself. No, I'm telling. So there is a, let's say, learned lady who has talked about this is the understanding of sex as way back in 9th century, where she's telling none less than Sri Adi Shankara, and Adi Shankara had to stop debate, take a break for 1 month because he was a brahmachari, he didn't know what it was about. And the story says that he went and he had to get into a body of a king and kind of experience this and come back and debate with her again, and to tell her, okay,
Tell Vikranta to not to look. Tell Vikranta not to look. Tell Vikranta not to look.
I'm sorry again that the technology.
No,
So
it's okay.
So many of these aspects, so the whole perspective, it is, it is to say that, I would say that, there's a lot of angle to this, but it has been written with the flow of the novel that it was written. So whether it is, many of the people, does it, torturing of a prisoner, or be it the, martial arts and fighting, or be it the, let's say, the sex content in the book, all have been as seen, as believe, as would be go natural with the character whom is depicted, and in the kind of situation that is depicted. In this particular case, the heroine is kind of trapped into this. She doesn't know. The protagonist is trapped with the male Mata Hari, which is again an ISI trademark kind of operation, which they have done in India with many people.
Because, if I remember correctly, somewhere in the first half of the book, I think Arun says that treat women delicately and with care. Not maybe those words, but to that effect. Okay, and then again later on, he tells his brother that women actually enjoy being raped. So how do you sort of bring the two together, coming from the same person?
No, so what is the gist of the thing is, okay. I think if you read carefully, you'll see the distinction. One, see here, actually, you're depicting a character who's from the Hindi heartland, who's a, let's say, there is a caste war in place where he has been a caste victim, and the girl who said she loved him, the day she gets to know that she's not, she's from a lower caste, she kicks him out, and she spares his life. That's all that. Now his whole thing after coming out that he has one more marriage, which also again goes, when the truth comes out, that this second woman also leaves him. So he has got a kind of score settling approach, wherein so he is telling, now this is what that is what I said. I've always said this. So that this is not about glorifying toxic male behavior or glorifying their justification. But there is what I'm telling is that, so these are kind of people, the people who do this. There are people who've done this kind of stuff, in a similar manner, and this is the kind of justification they give. In no way is it right. There's no way is it right. So this is just bringing out a perspective. So that the caste operation has taken place some village somewhere in the heartland. Result is coming out in Bombay and Delhi, where women who got nothing to do with him, who have no connection with him, but they're being penalized because somebody has been the victim at some stage. So this is also to highlight the fact that we need to address our social ills. And, that is, so many centuries, and it's still on. When you discuss this from Acharya, Drone, and his way he dealt with Ekalavya, because today also people feel that, that discrimination of the Dalits is there from the Mahabharata times. Acharya Drone also did the same. He was no better. So it is definitely a case for us to say that, we
But
also as a
yeah,
society, we must move forward.
actually, what I like is you've looked at it holistically. You've looked at people who think one way, which is the more civilized way, and you have looked at people who don't look at it the civilized way. So you've given both the perspectives, and that I thought was interesting. But tell me today, after your book has been published, do you ever think of changing any part of the plot or any character, doing more with the characters? Have you ever thought of that? I wonder. As a writer, do you sometimes think, oh, I wish I had not done this like this, but the character was, it's a little
And
different.
no. I have,
Yeah.
at least till now, no. I hope it doesn't come, because that's why I told you. That's right or wrong. So the writing process is very difficult to get back into the shoes again, because when you get character sketching and get into the characters and you do the writing, you again, it cannot be, because you can have beta reading and your editor tells you at that point that there's a connect. Editor is the best judge that you have. And sometimes you get some beta reading done and someone gives you some comment. You factor those. Beyond that, I also believe that, because uh, not every book is liked by everybody. And I do not expect this to be an exception. So I'm sure. Only thing is, so long as the majority like the book, I presume it's okay. I'll leave it at that. So
Yes.
otherwise, I
And
have to get into the writing process all over again, which is very challenging. And it's not easy at all. And it's not something which you can tweak like that. It's very difficult to just tweak, take a bit, bit piece. Someone doesn't like this, okay. you cut that off. Someone wants this more, so add somewhere there. So that will not be a kind of holistic work. Then it'll, it will be like, what is that? Slap on kind of things it'll look if you do like that.
Have you started your next book? Have you started
It's
writing?
books are churning in my mind. Yes, writing no.
Okay.
I'll start the one of the next year, not this year.
Because Shivo, I am greatly looking forward to reading your next book, and all the best with this one. I
Thank you
thoroughly
so much.
enjoyed
Thank you so much.
it. Thank you. Thank you for talking to me. And thank you, writers, readers and writers
Club.
club, and especially Mona and Sushruth. Thank you.
Thank you so much.